Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is One Punch Man, Season 1, Episode 6, The Terrifying City. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happens within this episode. So the episode starts with Saitama lazing around his home, feeling a bit of regret for letting Genos stay because Genos is there taking notes of his every move to try to determine the source of his strength, which is putting pressure on Saitama. However, then in an offhand comment, Genos mentions that as a C rank hero, Saitama needs to have hero activity every single week, and if he goes a week without any hero activity, he will be taken off the hero registry, which puts Saitama into a panic, so he decides he's going to go out and look for, minor crimes since there haven't been any big incidents lately, and that's what he used to go after as a hobby. So Genos wants to go with him, but Saitama says he won't get any of the credit if an S-Class is with him. So he basically BS's a training for Genos to basically say, because you're a cyborg, you don't need to physically train, you should train your mind. Start with the goal of getting into the top 10 S ranks. And then Genos agrees and he goes out. And then he basically spends a day running around the city before he doesn't find anything. So then he goes out the next day, which is the last day he has, and he runs into Speedo Sonic, who's basically come to re-challenge him. However, Saitama is busy trying to find a bad guy, can't deal with him right now. Sonic, of course, keeps trying to attack him, but Saitama just dodges it, not really even noticing him, as he looks around for some sort of bad guy. However, then a hero, Tank Top Tiger, comes along and basically was pointed out to Saitama by a member of the public because she thought he was weird for running around. Saitama tells him that he is a hero too and he's new to the job, but Tank Top Tiger says, then you're making us all look bad because you're being mistaken for a villain, obviously, and then offers to fight with Saitama, but then he ends up getting taken out by Speedo Sonic, which then causes all of the people on the street to start to panic. So then Saitama is like really annoyed because Speedo Sonic is now causing trouble and he's trying to find a bad guy. Then, really, really delayed, he realizes that Sonic is a bad guy and takes him out, which gets him the credit so he doesn't have to do anything for another week. And then we move to the Hero Association, where Busho is basically talking about how there's an investigation he's sent 2 A-rank hunters to investigate this abandoned section of City Z where there has been a large amount of monster activity and no one is supposedly living in. Tatsumaki, who is another S-Class hero, gets upset that she wasn't asked to investigate, but they assure her that it wasn't really an S-Class thing. And then there's basically a meeting amongst a bunch of officials for the association where they go over all of the various cities and the reports from heroes who have been assigned to watch it to let them know if anything unusual is happening, and all of the reports come back as nothing unusual. Then Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball, who are the ones assigned to the abandoned part of City Z, enter in there, and we find out that they're from Kombu Infinity, which is a monster, that there is a rumor amongst monsters that there is a large gathering of very powerful monsters in the abandoned part of City Z, which is why a lot of monsters keep going there. However, we very quickly learn that the abandoned part of City Z is where Genos and Saitama are living, and Saitama's probably that really powerful monster that's rumored to live there on both sides. Anyway, Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball conflict with Kombu Infinity, and they lose. But Saitama, who's coming back from groceries, happens to come across the Combo Infinity, and he defeats him off screen, but presumably with one punch, and returns home where he starts to make a kombu soup, or a kombu soup. And then Genos comes in and starts talking about how there, there are theories that kombu is good for hair growth, but there's no science to back up these rumors, so you can't put a lot of stock in it. And Saitama, of course, gets offended. While Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball were being defeated, they sent out a call for help. So there's a large gathering of monsters, not monsters, heroes that kind of think about coming to help him, but ultimately decide not to, including Fubuki, who is, um, sorry, Tatsumaki's sibling, but not as powerful, though she does seem to lead a gang. And then the episode basically ends with the association kind of panicking over the remnants of Saitama's fight because when he killed Kombu, he left a notch in the building, and then basically everyone's panicking that there's a super duper duper strong monster in the abandoned part of City Z, and it's now on the radar. And that's what happened. So now it's time to rank the episode. As always, we will rank on our two lists, the mostly objective ranking list, which uses set values, and then the personal ranking list, which is based on my opinion of the episode. So we'll start with our mostly objective rank values, and I highlighted those I felt applied to this particular episode. So we start with our single episode supporting character introduction, which was Kombu Infinity, and that was 1 point. Then we have our multi-episode supporting character introductions. And for this one, it was a bit difficult because there were a lot of bit part heroes that do recur in multiple episodes, but because there were so many and none of them really take on a big role, I did make the decision to list out their names, but I'm counting them all as 2 points. Like, I'm not giving them each 2 points. So we had Tank Top Tiger, Watchdog Man, which is an S rank, but he never leaves City Q and therefore has a very bit part in the series. Then we have Spring Mustachio, Golden Ball, D-Pad, Smile Man, Food Battler Futoshi, Skunk Boy, Gas Mask, Blue Fire, Mountain Ape, Eyelashes, Lily, and Battery Man also showed up in that little cafe where they were once they received the signal for help from Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball. Then we have our multi-season supporting character introductions, which are Tatsumaki and Fubuki. Lightning Max also was in that cafe area, so he's like and was introduced, but it was like a teaser. And I know that he plays more of a larger role than some of the others. But he was actually, I missed him in that list of them. So after Battery Man, we have Lightning Max, and that's part of the multi-episode supporting. Anyways, Tatsumaki and Fubuki are large enough characters throughout the seasons that they're in to be worth 3 points each, which brings us to 9. Then we have our multi-season main character development, which is where we learn the location that Saitama lives in. We learn that he lives in City Z, in the abandoned part of the city, and that Genos apparently has been doing chores in addition to living with them because when um, Golden Ball and Spring Mustachio enter into the city, Genos senses them and he pauses in scrubbing the toilet before they move on, and then he's like, okay, well, guess it was nobody not after us. But fun little snippet, and that is worth 4 points. And then we also have the bit of world building, which is, of course, the introduction of the Hero Association's rule that a C rank with no hero activity after a full week will be removed from the registry, which means that C rank heroes have to constantly be active and typically will go after the small fries like burglars, pickpockets, purse snatchers, things like that, rather than the big prey that Saitama's used to. And so this just is a little extra on the rules of the association. But overall, again, I didn't think that there were any major negatives in this episode, and that is why it's a 17 out of 10, and once again, we have a 10 out of 10 episode. And honestly, at this point, I'm starting to think it's unfair, but what are you going to do? The ranks are what they are. So that brings the season ranking so far in our mostly objective ranking to in first, the strongest man, the lone cyborg, the modern ninja, the ultimate master, the terrifying city is in fifth, and that's because it's our fifth 10 out of 10. And on our mostly objective, when two episodes have the same score, we rank in air order, like the order they aired in. And then sixth is the obsessive scientist. My personal ranking for this one, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that they added this time crunch for Saitama so that he had to run around in such a crazy way that the citizens actually started to think he was up to something. And how as soon as sunset hits, instead of continuing like into after dark where most likely the crime would start, he decides he's going to go home and leave tomorrow's problems to tomorrow's him. I also like when So I like Sonic. I think he's hilarious. And I like how he's like one-sidedly become Saitama's rival, and Saitama can't even remember his name. He means so little to him, but, you know, Sonic would pursue him, and when he can't get his attention, he then decides to go ahead and start causing a lot of trouble, and Saitama, who somehow has this blind spot, soft spot for Sonic, goes around and gets like upset that he's getting in the way of him finding a bad guy before he just sees him like kind of in the air throwing a bunch of basically a bunch of what am I thinking? Ninja weapons down on I think it was exploding shuriken, that's what he used. Exploding shuriken. And he was just throwing those down at like everything. And then Saitama looks at him, he's like, "Oh, a bad guy." Because he didn't notice at first. And then he takes him in. And we learn that Sonic has a rap sheet when the association is going over the report of Saitama capturing him. We also had, the investigation into the place where Saitama lives and that little bit with Genos. But what I didn't like about the episode was I felt like it tried to almost overwhelm me with the number of people being introduced. Like they're going over all the city's reports, so they were just naming a bunch of heroes with like an image on screen that we weren't actually interacting with, so good luck remembering their names. Then, Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball, we see them. They fight a bit, but we don't really. They're basically there to show the strength of the monster so that when Saitama comes in and defeats it easily, once again, we're kind of shown that he's super duper strong, stronger than all the others, and they're supposed to be A ranks, which compared to Saitama, they are much weaker, so once again, that discrepancy with the ranking comes into play. Then we had like the cafe where we have a bunch of heroes all gathered together talking, and a couple of them are named, but most aren't. And I felt like a lot of the episode was showing us a bunch of heroes that we didn't even have enough time to really comprehend their existence before they were no longer important. And I do think it still was a very entertaining episode. It did keep my attention. And the first half with Saitama and Sonic, that was really fun as well. But ultimately, it wasn't the best episode, which is why I decided to give it a 7 out of 10. And that brings the season ranking so far to personal ranking, the ultimate master, the obsessive scientist, the strongest man, the lone cyborg, the terrifying city is this episode in 5th, and then in 6th, the modern ninja. That then brings us to the series rankings so far, where we'll be ranking each of the seasons against each other. And on our mostly objective ranking, season 1 so far has a score of 58 out of 120. And then on the personal ranking, there is a score of 47 out of 120. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked One Punch Man Season 1, Episode 7, The Terrifying City. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.